500 missiles armed, bases cleared, the Iran clock is already running. They are not telling you this on the news, not yet. But right now, as you watch this video, American military bases across the Middle East are being quietly cleared of non-essential personnel. Carrier strike groups have repositioned, and 500 missiles, prepositioned, targeted, locked, are sitting in a state that military planners call ready for execute. This is not a drill. This is not a news cycle. And here is the part that should disturb you most. None of this is a surprise, not to the people who understand how empires actually die. Because what you're watching right now is not a crisis. It is a pattern that has repeated, identically, mechanically, without exception, across every dominant power in the last 500 years. And once I show you the pattern, you're going to realize something terrifying. You have seen this before. You just did not know what you were looking at. But before I show you the pattern, let me tell you something about your money, your savings, your retirement account, your mortgage. Because this is not just a geopolitical story. This is a story about your financial life and what happens to it when the machine finally stops. Stay with me, because this is where most people change the channel. And it is the single biggest financial mistake they will ever make. Here is the mechanism. 4 stages. No exceptions in recorded history. None. Stage 1 is the setup. A dominant power seizes control of something the entire world cannot function without. The reserve currency, the critical trade route, the essential resource. They build a web of dependency so complex, so total, that every nation on Earth becomes structurally reliant on the dominant power's survival. Not by choice, by architecture. The system is designed that way. And critically, at this stage, everyone inside the system genuinely believes it is permanent. That is not naivety. That is by design. Stage 2 is overextension. The dominant power, drunk on its own supremacy, begins expanding its commitments faster than its economic base can support. Wars it cannot afford. Promises it cannot keep. A military footprint so vast that the cost of simply maintaining it begins hollowing out the domestic foundation beneath it. Debt accumulates, currency quietly degrades. The gap between the story of invincibility and the reality of structural rot widens. Slowly at first, then all at once. Stage 3 is the crisis. Something arrives, a war, a financial shock, a geopolitical humiliation, and it does not cause the collapse. That distinction matters enormously. It reveals the collapse that was already underway. The dry rot was always there. The crisis is just the moment when the floor gives way and everyone can finally see it. Rivals reposition. Allies quietly calculate new loyalties. And the dominant power does the only thing it knows how to do. It reaches for military force. Stage 4 is the outcome, and this is where it gets cold. Military force deployed by an economically hollowed empire does not restore dominance. It accelerates the decline it was meant to prevent. Every missile fired is a mortgage on the future. Every new base abroad is a dollar not spent at home, and every war launched to prove strength broadcasts to every watching rival the depth of the desperation driving it. The direction is fixed, the destination is set, the pattern does not break. Now let me prove it to you. 3 empires, 3 centuries, one identical machine. Spain, 1600. By every conceivable measure, the supreme force on Earth. Its silver mines at Potosi in what is now Bolivia were pumping so much precious metal into the global economy that Spain effectively controlled the world's monetary system. Stage 1, complete. The most formidable navy ever assembled, colonies on 3 continents, Habsburg alliances stretching across Europe. The setup was total. Then stage 2. Spain began fighting everywhere simultaneously. The 80 Years' War in the Netherlands, the 30 Years' War across Central Europe, naval conflicts with England, military campaigns across the Americas. And here's the detail that should sound familiar. Spain began borrowing against future silver shipments to fund present military campaigns. The silver was mortgaged before it even arrived. Sound familiar? It should. By the mid-1600s, stage 3 arrived. Silver production collapsed as the richest veins ran dry. The Dutch secured their independence after 80 years of war. The Portuguese broke free. The French began systematically dismantling Spanish power across Europe. And Spain's answer to all of it? Stage 4, more military campaigns, deeper debt, louder declarations of supremacy from an empire that was already contracting. By 1700, Spain was a secondary power. By 1800, a cautionary tale. The machine had run its course. Britain, 1870, workshop of the world. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. The Royal Navy controlled every critical sea lane. British banks financed infrastructure on every inhabited continent. At its peak, the British Empire administered 1/4 of the Earth's land surface. Stage 1, dominant beyond anything seen before it. But Stage 2 arrived with brutal arithmetic. The cost of maintaining empire, The garrisons, the naval stations, the colonial bureaucracies, the endless frontier wars from Afghanistan to South Africa was staggering. And while Britain maintained its commitments, Germany was industrializing at ferocious speed. America was becoming an economic colossus. Britain's share of global industrial production was declining steadily. The appearance of supremacy was intact. The reality beneath it was rotting. Stage 3 came twice, 1914 and 1939. The First World War cost Britain 700,000 dead and transformed it from the world's largest creditor to a debtor nation. America, which entered the war late, emerged economically strengthened, while Britain emerged hollowed. And Britain's response, Stage 4, was to maintain its imperial commitments, its global military posture, its naval supremacy, even as the economic foundation beneath it crumbled. The Second World War completed the transfer. By 1945, the dollar had replaced the pound. The empire was dismantled over the following 2 decades. Not by choice, but because Britain no longer had the economic capacity to sustain it. The machine had run its course. Now here is the third case study, and this one is going to be uncomfortable because this one is the United States. 1944, Bretton Woods. The dollar becomes the global reserve currency, backed by gold at $35 per ounce. Every nation on earth pegs to the dollar. Every central bank accumulates dollars as its primary reserve. American industrial production is generating roughly 50% of global GDP. Stage 1, not just established, but codified in international law. No empire in history had ever achieved such institutionally entrenched dominance. Stage 2 began almost immediately. Korea, Vietnam. Military bases across Western Europe, the Pacific, East Asia, the nuclear arms race, a military-industrial complex so large and so deeply embedded in the American economic system that President Eisenhower, the man who commanded Allied forces in World War II, stood at his farewell podium in January 1961 and warned that it had become a permanent constituency for conflict. The cost of all of it was being paid by printing dollars, confident that global demand for the reserve currency would absorb the excess. It was financial sleight of hand of breathtaking audacity, and for a while it worked. Stage 3, August 15th, 1971, a Sunday evening. Richard Nixon appears on national television and announces that the United States is suspending the convertibility of the dollar to gold. This is the Nixon shock, and most Americans still do not understand what it actually meant. It meant this. By 1971, the United States had printed so many dollars to fund its military commitments and expanding global posture that it no longer had sufficient gold to honor its Bretton Woods obligations. France, under de Gaulle, had already begun demanding gold in exchange for accumulated dollars, correctly identifying that America was running a monetary scheme it could not sustain. Nixon's response was to end the rules unilaterally. The crisis that reveals structural weakness had arrived, and Stage 4 has been playing out in slow motion ever since. Gulf War, 1991. Afghanistan, 2001. Iraq, 2003. Libya, 2011. Syria throughout the 2010s. Each intervention sold with a different narrative. Each one, viewed through the lens of the pattern, is the same thing, an overextended empire using military force to maintain a position of global supremacy that its underlying economic fundamentals can no longer sustain organically. The national debt now exceeds $34 trillion. The annual interest payments on that debt have surpassed the entire defense budget. The machine is not breaking down. The machine has already broken. What you're watching now is the final movement of its gears. Apply that to Iran. Right now, stage by stage, Stage 1. After Nixon's shock, America cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. All global oil transactions would be denominated in dollars. The petrodollar was born. Artificial, structural, global demand for American currency manufactured through energy markets. Bases established across the Gulf. The Iranian Shah supported as a compliant regional partner. American dominance of the world's most critical energy region was the new foundation of dollar supremacy. Check. Stage 2. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 destroyed the Iranian pillar of that architecture overnight. America responded by backing Saddam Hussein's Iraq in its war against Iran throughout the 1980s, a war that killed hundreds of thousands. Then the Gulf War, which planted permanent American military forces in Saudi Arabia, which became, as Osama bin Laden stated explicitly, one of his primary grievances. Each intervention produced the conditions requiring the next intervention. The overextension was not linear. It was compounding. Check. Stage 3. The 2003 invasion of Iraq eliminated the one Arab state serving as a natural counterbalance to Iranian regional power. By removing Saddam, America handed Iran its greatest strategic victory in decades, opening Iraq to Iranian political penetration and unleashing proxy network expansion across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. The Abraham Accords of 2020, normalizing Israeli relations with Gulf Arab states, were explicitly a coalition against Iran, which itself acknowledged that Iranian regional power had grown to the point requiring a formal multilateral counter-architecture. The consequences of overextension had become impossible to contain. Check. Stage 4. Today, Iran sits at near-threshold nuclear capability. Its ballistic missile arsenal numbers in the thousands. Its drone technology has been battle-tested in Ukraine through sales to Russia. Its proxy networks demonstrated in October 2023 the ability to coordinate attacks across multiple theaters simultaneously. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's daily oil supply moves, sits within Iranian interdiction range. 500 missiles prepositioned, carrier groups repositioned, bases cleared. This is not ambiguity, this is stage 4. Check, verified, undeniable. And here is what no one on television is telling you. The question is not whether America wins the opening military exchange. It would. The question is what comes after. A campaign against Iran is not a surgical strike with a clean ending. It is an open-ended commitment, entered with $34 trillion in debt, a 1. $8 trillion annual deficit, a defense industrial base. The Pentagon's own reports describe as strained and a domestic political environment increasingly hostile to foreign entanglement. Spain thought its silver would sustain the wars. Britain thought the Royal Navy made the empire permanent. Every empire that reached stage 4 and chose military assertion over structural adaptation found the campaign accelerated the very decline it was meant to reverse. You will be told, this time is different. You will hear that American military technology is so categorically superior that history does not apply, that the innovation economy, AI, shale energy, the tech sector, represents a new foundation that previous empires never had. You will hear the argument about American exceptionalism, about resilience, about the unique structural centrality of the dollar. These are the same arguments Spain made about its silver, the same arguments Britain made about the pound and the City of London. Every empire, at the moment of its stage 4 crisis, produces the argument that its dominance is historically unique and exempt from the pattern. The argument is always wrong. Not sometimes, always. Here is what this means for you personally. Right now, in this moment, your savings, your investments, your retirement account, all of it is embedded in a structure built on dollar supremacy. If this confrontation triggers sustained disruption to global oil markets, energy prices spike. If energy prices spike, inflation, which the Federal Reserve spent 2 years fighting back from its 2022 peak of over 9%, returns. If inflation returns while growth contracts, you get stagflation. The same stagflation America experienced in the 1970s, which took Paul Volcker raising interest rates above 20% to finally break. The pattern does not destroy everyone. It destroys the unprepared, the people who accepted the dominant narrative and structured their entire financial lives around the assumption of the system's permanence. The people who survived Spain's collapse diversified into real assets and commodities that held value outside any single state's political decisions. The people who navigated Britain's decline understood that the pound's role was being transferred, not dissolved, and positioned accordingly. The pattern is not a prediction of extinction, it is a prediction of transformation. And in every transformation, there are those who saw it coming and those who did not. The clock has not started counting down. It already ran out. What you're watching now is the aftermath, one being written in real time. In the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how the petrodollar system was constructed after Nixon's shock, what it actually required of American foreign policy to maintain it, and what the transition to a new monetary architecture looks like on a personal, practical level for your money, your assets, and your decisions in the next 5 years. If you watch this far, you already understand more than most people around you. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this pattern is going to move faster than any of the ones before it. And when it does, you will want to have already seen it coming. Word count, 350 words.